Quý vị đang xem chương trình của Tin Vui Media, tiếng nói của những nhà truyền thông Công giáo.
Ugh, what am I going to do with all these? Gosh, there's a million of them to do, as if life wasn't busy enough as it was. Even if I were to get in, can I even afford to pay for it? Am I even cut out for college? Ugh, I don't know what to do next.
Yeah, no. I'm just not getting it. The DAT's tomorrow, but I just don't get it. I need a 22. 17 isn't high enough. Do I even want to do this? I don't even want to be a dentist, but will my family be happy with me? I don't know what to do for a career anymore. What's next?
Next question is Mr. Jeff Lilley. How do you think we should figure out how God wants us to live our lives, like you did? Are there things that we can do to hear God more clearly? And what if I don't feel, what if I don't like God's answer?
Most of the time you won't. That's the reason why you're not doing it to begin with. That's the thing with God, is that He has that ability to know more about our future than we do, and we tend to constantly take back the reins of our life. But I think the simple answer is just to pay attention to the still small voice of God on the small things. And there's a verse in the Bible that says, "He who is faithful in little, I will reward with much." And it's the idea that it's in the little things that make a difference. So I'll tell a quick story. When I was at the camp, we had a lot of college students that would be staff. We had about a staff of about 500 college students. So the number one question that would always come up is, how do I know God's will for my life? And these college students would ask this question all the time, and what they really meant was, how do I know if this is the right girl to marry? You know, that's, so like you're about to, you've answered that question. But it's always the question, well, what do I pursue as a job or that kind of thing? So I had one college student comes up one time and he asked this question and said, how do I know if it's God? How do I know what I'm doing? How do I figure this thing out? And I said, well, you have to believe that if God is real, that He's talking to you all the time. He's not waiting for, well, in 3 years from now, you're going to make a big career decision, and now I'm going to talk to you. That He's actually active in our lives all day long. So I said, so what happens is you might be walking across the parking lot, you see a piece of trash, and God's like, you should pick up that trash. And so I told him, I said, this happens to me sometimes, because I'm the president of the camp. You're trying to make the camp look clean. You're walking across the parking lot, there's a piece of trash. And then I start doing this thing in my head where I'm like, well, no, that's just me thinking I should pick up the trash. And it's like, well, maybe it's God saying you should pick up the trash. And so I get all confused in my head about which voice is mine, which voice is God's. So I told him, I said, just be faithful to do those things that you know are consistent with the voice of God. So later on in the day, and I tell him, be faithful in those little things, do those little things, and then you're going to start recognizing the voice of God. You're going to hear it more along the way. So later on, he comes running up to me, and he's like, Jeff, it happened. And I'm like, what happened? And he's like, I heard from God. And I'm like, seriously? Because I didn't expect him, to think, the clouds parted, God's voice comes down and tells you exactly what to do. And I'm like, what happened? And he's going, I'm walking across the parking lot, and there's a piece of trash. And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm trying to tell you to do. And he's like, no, listen. He says, I'm walking across the parking lot, and there's a piece of trash, and I keep walking by. And this voice keeps going, pick up the trash. And I'm like, no, that's just Jeff's voice telling me that I should pick up the trash. And so I kept just arguing with the voice. But the further I got from the trash, I got more convinced that it wasn't your voice, but it was actually God trying to grab a hold of me. So he says, I turned around and I went back to pick up the trash. And his whole thing for the summer was he wanted to talk to people about God, and his job had him working in maintenance, and he never got a chance to encounter anybody to talk to him about God. So he says, so finally I go back and I go to pick up the trash, and as I'm bending down to pick up this trash, a person comes up to me and stops and says, hey, do you work here? Because he was picking up the trash. And he stops and goes, yeah. And he says, well, I don't understand this place. All these kids here, what's going on? This place is about God? Could you tell me about God? And the very thing that this young man wanted to do was to talk to people about God. And the very thing God wanted him to do was just that. And he was trying to talk to him all along. So my advice and my encouragement is, all day long, God's trying to get a hold of you. He's trying to get your attention. He's whispering those things to you. And we need to be faithful in the little things. Be faithful and be obedient in the small things God calls you to do. And then when we get to these big decisions about what you're going to do with your life, you're going to recognize the voice.
Next question is for Richie. Question is, was it tough to communicate with your parents about your decision to go to media and YouTube? And any suggestions on if another person was in some situation, what advice you'd give them?
Yeah, they looked at me crazy, trust me. Especially because I just had gotten a job. I think it was really important just to communicate to them what I was trying to accomplish. I know after I moved, my parents were really disappointed in myself, and you know, I'm sure people at our church were like tagging them in some of my videos, and they might have looked a little bit silly and whatnot. But every time I would come back to visit, you know, I kind of reassure them, like, this is what I truly want to do, and any type of job would always be there for me. And I think if you feel strongly about your mission and your purpose, all that noise and everything that people think about what you're doing, it's all gonna fade away, you know what I mean? And I truly believe that the youth really needed some representation out there, and I was gonna do whatever it took. So, you know, as my parents' son, yeah, I felt bad, but I really, like, I was so tunnel vision to what I was trying to do that sometimes you just gotta believe in yourself that much where, you know, it'll come to a day where they'll accept what you're doing, yeah.
Oh, Young An, what advice do you have for young Vietnamese females who are fighting?
First of all, when we say young Vietnamese female, I think the most obvious question that one, or the underlying question is, what about discrimination? How do you handle discrimination, right? Because of my personal lessons in life about discrimination, I would say, first of all, don't take it too personally. Try to be practical, okay? If somebody doesn't like you because of your skin color or gender or your race or whatever, there's really nothing you can do about it. Instead, but think about it this way. Be practical. You know, at work, you don't really need to be liked. You need to be respected. Okay? And you can, and you will earn people's respect based on your work ethics, your performance, you know, your work output. And the more successful you become, others will want to come and work for you or with you, despite their prejudice, because they too want to be successful. Okay? What I mean by do not take it personally, I'll tell you a funny story quickly. Back after my job doing the thermobaric bomb for Afghanistan, I got another call. Pentagon said that President Bush is about to send Marine Corps, our troops into Iraq. And they needed, again, a better weapon to defeat enemies that they know will hide in buildings and houses and shooting out at our Marine Corps. So we had to come up with a new warhead for the Marine Small, which is the shoulder-launched weapon that they all have. And so the key thing is I have to take my team to go and talk to this particular captain, a Marine Corps captain, who just came back from Iraq, because I need very quick information about, for example, what is a typical building in Iraq looks like. In Baghdad looks like, how thick is the wall, is it brick, is it cement, etc. So I took the team there, and all of a sudden I realized that the whole 1 hour or more that we spent in that room talking to that Marine Corps captain, he never looked at me. He never even showed any sign that he acknowledged my existence. Okay? When we talked back and forth, if there was a question that my team couldn't answer, I answered it, and then he came up with a follow-up question. The whole time he would look at one of my team members, but not at me. By the way, I was the lead, but I was the woman. All of my 3 lead engineers under me were white guys, white men. Okay. So I went home realizing that, okay, this guy was at least a male chauvinistic, or maybe he's also prejudiced because I happen to be Vietnamese, not just because I was a woman. And by the way, he was a captain. Back then, I was already in GS-15. That means I was 3 notches above him. Okay, I was equivalent to colonel. So what was my choices? Well, I could choose to be indignant, right? I could choose to be angry. I could choose to go and complain to the colonel, who was my counterpart and his, 3 times bosses. Or I could choose to be practical about this and not taking it personally, because I asked myself, who needs whom more at this point? I need him more than he does, than he needs me. Okay? So I told my team, okay guys, for all the meetings afterwards, you guys go without me, because I don't think at this point my presence in the room would help. It might actually hurt. So we went on, we did a great job, we were successful. We come up with a new weapon. The final really test was to demonstrate this new weapon to a 2-star Marine Corps general. So we did that. Test went beautifully. Then I walked back to the control room with the Marine Corps general. Then when we got to the door, the general turned over to the captain and said, "Captain so-and-so, why don't you pour Mrs. Wu her coffee?" Here's a guy who succeeded to ignore me all these 8 months, right? Like I didn't exist. Now I had to pour me a coffee. Now, my team members were all silent looking at me because they knew that I didn't drink coffee. But you think I would pass the chance? So I calmly gave him instructions how I wanted my coffee. So I said, don't take it personally, right? But, the point here is we might be forced to take a bumpier path, a less traveled road, minefields, potholes. Maybe we will have more shares of those than others. But, in the end, it will make our rewards, our victory, even sweeter. So the private joke was since then, and actually that's how I learned to drink coffee. And every time that our team ran into a tense moment, one of my team members, one of the guys would put a cup of coffee in front of me to remind me. So again, advice, just like everybody else, we will have to work hard. Nothing different from everybody else, whether you're male, female, Vietnamese, American, whatever, right? Work ethics. The funny thing, oh, by the way, because Vietnamese have the saying "công dung ngôn hạnh," right? Saying that us women, those are the 4 qualities that if we follow those, then we'll be very successful in life. So let me reframe those in this modern world for you. Công really means your work, right? Whether it's work that you do at home or for your employer, it's all about your output, your performance. So needless to say, of course, that means you need to study hard, you need to do well, work hard, etc. That's easy. Okay. Dung, right? This time, it's really, Dung here doesn't mean your beauty. It really is about how you present yourself. Okay? Depending on your employment, where you work, but when you get in, pay attention to how other people dress around. Okay, when we say about dressing, it's really dressing properly, not being the best, the stylish, or unless you work in fashion design, that's different. But if you're in a conservative line of work like mine, then pay attention to how others work, how other dresses, especially if we're women. Again, stay away from revealing clothes, very, very stylish clothes that, might not fit. If it's not like you're going to parties, right? So again, it is about dressing properly, not necessarily richly or stylishly. Ngôn, very important. This is really about communication skills, especially in the modern world. Ngôn is about communication skills. Throughout my career, I would have to say that I've seen a lot of very talented scientists and engineers who got passed by when it comes to promotion because they might be very brilliant scientists, but they have poor communication skills, especially presentation skills, verbal skills. We watch a great communication, somebody with great communication skills today, right? Again, in this day and age, a lot of times people judge us based on the way we speak. Whether it's fair or not, that's how people judge you. So, especially if you intend to go into fields like mine, science and technology, where I would say most people do not pay attention to those skills because otherwise they would have gone into liberal arts or other fields like law or whatever, but they chose science and engineers because a lot of them happen to be, maybe an I instead of an extrovert than introverts. So if you're in that world and you stand out as a great communicator, when you do a great job at technical presentation, people assume that you're very competent. They just make that assumption. Okay? Hạnh, right? The last of the 4 qualities, again, in this modern world, again, it means work ethics. Right? No matter how talented you are, no matter how good you are at something, whatever your heart, is your heart in the right place? Right? For example, Hitler, he's very talented at what he did, but because of his ethics, he became the essence of evilness. So the heart is what governs everything else that we do. And again, an environment. So those would be the 4 things that I would, again, give as advice to any young Vietnamese female. Công dung hôn hạnh, just in a slightly modern way of interpreting it. Thank you.
Next question is for Anh Lao. Was it intimidating to be working in the White House and seeing all these influential people? Did that inspire you to come back and help in Seattle?
Most definitely. I think as a local kid, I think working alongside the sons and daughters of ambassadors, of CEOs, of kids who were born into wealth, like I was just a kid from the hood. So like working there, I think Back just talked about it in the work ethic. Like I think I'm not the smartest kid, but I'm willing to work. And I worked harder than any other intern at the White House, and I was recognized for that. So pulling 16, 18-hour days and not getting a lot of sleep, because when I mentioned that history unfolded, history unfolds every day in our country at that place, and I think being a place where the president placed sanctions on Russia for invading Ukraine. The president was on vacation when Ferguson, Missouri happened and Michael Brown was killed. We started our war with ISIS that summer. So I think seeing history unfold was super inspiring to me, but I think it all continued to come back to serving my community. And I think I was very lucky to have been able to serve my country for a short time. But serving my community is kind of what gets me up in the morning. And it was an amazing experience, and I can tell you more at lunch about some of the cool stories and experiences I had there. But I think coming home, I knew I wanted to come home. One, because my girlfriend at the time would have left me if I didn't, and she's now my wife. But 2, I think they wanted to offer me a job there to stay on, but no, it's like coming back home, being close to my family and serving my community was why I left my career, why I went on this journey. So I came home once the internship was over, and I looked back, so happy as it.
Very cool. Next question is for Jeff. You mentioned that you're an introvert. As an introvert myself, what advice would you give me to get over this introvertedness and get out there to do good?
Yeah, you gotta find a place where you can find some courage to push yourself into places where you don't want to go, places you don't want to be. It helped me that the person that I married was an extrovert. So find yourself an extrovert and marry them. So would all the extroverts raise their hands? Keep your hands up. Go find one of these people. There's typically introverts can actually, because you spend more time inside your head, you can actually be pretty smart. And I think Juan did a great job today about that script that we run in our head, that song that's whacked. And too often, that's what's holding us back. And many of the times, what we as introverts are thinking in our head is probably better than a lot of the extroverts are just spouting out of their mouths. And you extroverts know this. You know you lead with talking first. And it doesn't mean that you're not gifted too, but the point is that sometimes what you're feeling, what you're thinking is the very thing that needs to be said, that needs to be led with. So it's finding the small ways where you can be courageous, finding those places where you can find your ability to step out into an area and speak that part that's burning inside of you to say something and do something. And again, stop and tell yourself that those other thoughts are just whack.
Awesome. Next question is for Richie. Do you feel that you face challenges in the entertainment industry because you're Vietnamese American? And if so, how have you dealt with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people have, a preconceived notion of what representation should be when it comes to the field that I'm in, especially when I work with companies like Nike or Adidas. Usually they're looking at, more African Americans or white people. And for me to be a short Vietnamese guy in their facility, they're like, they kind of give me that side eye sometimes. And I think you just got to find beauty in your struggle, beauty in what makes you unique. And sometimes what I bring to the table is not something that a lot of other people could bring to the table. I think I have a good balance between like the urban side, also, going to college and whatnot. I have both sides, and I could definitely take advantage of that when I'm in these situations. And yeah, so to answer the question, I do get a little bit of that, negativity sometimes, but I just got to remind myself that I'm unique in my own way, and what I bring into the table, a lot of people can't bring to the table as well. So yeah.
Cool. And what are some of the roadblocks that you run into during your work trying to improve the education programs here in Seattle?
I think we've talked about this on this panel. I think just housing is unbelievable right now. Just in order to rent, in order to buy. In our schools, you have a lot of people who don't have homes, who are homeless, who are sleeping in cars, who are sleeping in shelters, and they're coming to school and they haven't showered. So I think some of the challenges is schools and cities are really struggling to deal with housing unaffordability, with homelessness. I think some of the high schools that I work with, you have students who are dealing with peer pressure, with mental health issues, with suicidal thoughts. But I think it all comes back down to supporting principals, supporting teachers who care so much about their students, who care so much about their kids, and giving them the resources, the knowledge, the training to help their students and families overcome these obstacles. Like, I think working in education, I'm dealing with real problems that I didn't deal with when I was working in finance. And this is, sometimes it can be kind of paralyzing or overwhelming, but you have to take it one classroom at a time, one school at a time, one principal, one teacher at a time, and try to figure out a plan to how to serve the very diverse needs across our city amongst all the schools. So it's really hard work, but it's also really challenging and interesting work.
So now this next question is for everyone. And what we can do is we can start, Richie, we go back down this way. And this person's an international student from Vietnam, from a community that judges harshly if you don't succeed in the short term. They have expectations for students who study abroad to come back and do huge things like start a company. I'm feeling feeling a lot of pressure. Recommendations from you on how to overcome this pressure?
I would say you just gotta, stay true to yourself and stay remind yourself why you're doing what you're doing. Sometimes the pressure of everybody and your peers and whatnot can really hinder what you're doing and your motivation and your confidence and everything. But like I keep saying in like all my answers is if you believe in yourself enough, all that will kind of fade away, you know. And I know for me growing up, I had to get out of my situation in Seattle just because I feel like it was a really repetitive lifestyle and everything. And I had a lot of peers that, you know, kind of laugh at you when you're trying to do something a little bit different. But if you believe in yourself, you know, take yourself out of the situation and put yourself in a position where you can win. And for myself, it was Los Angeles because I just knew I would be able to focus on the YouTube and something that a lot of people didn't really get in Seattle. So going back to the person that asked the question, just believe in yourself and yeah, just believe in yourself.
You know, of course, when we are facing with a challenge, or is it because you're trying to get this job, right? Or you're trying to pass the exam tomorrow, then it seems to be like a mountain. You know, this is the most important thing for you now, and it might be the most important thing for your life. But really, you know, life is a long path. This is just really another bump. If you get over it, great. If you don't, it doesn't mean that that's the end of the world. Okay? So let me ask this question, and what differentiates a tennis ball from an apple when you throw both of them on the floor? Apple, beautiful red apple would get immediately smashed, right, into pieces. What happened to the tennis ball, the dull tennis ball? It bounces back like nothing happened to it, right? So what we need to tell ourselves is, I am a resilient tennis ball, and it will always bounce back no matter how many times I get thrown on the floor. You know, not getting a job, not getting, you know, passing an exam or whatever, a lot of times we label these disappointments as failures. But really, true failures only happen when we learn nothing from one disappointment to prepare us, better prepare us for the next opportunity. And I promise you, there will always be a next opportunity if you're resilient enough to hang on to your dream. So think of yourself that way, then it's always a win-win situation. Either you will get the job, you will pass the exam, you will get that desired result, or if you don't, you will learn from that one experience to help you better prepare for the next opportunity. So it's always a win-win, guys. Nothing is the end of the world.
When I was leaving California, I had some really cool job offers, and some of them paid a lot of money, some of them had a lot of prestige, and there were a lot of people excited for me on what my future was going to be. And then along the way, there was this thought that I would go work for a rescue mission. And I had tons of friends who came up to me and said, Jeff, what are you doing? You're going to waste your life, you're going to waste your skills, you're going to waste your gifts, you shouldn't do that. It's just like a rescue mission, it's a bunch of homeless people, why do they need you? And that was something that I faced, that going through that whole part of, well, what is God called me to do? What am I made to do? And there's that idea that as you go back, there's a question there of what are you made to do? What is it that you're really good at doing? What is it that you can do to impact your community? Because the bottom line is, if you go and just do the other thing because that's what everybody else thinks you should do, you're going to end up finding yourself years down the road feeling miserable and feeling like you've chased a dream that wasn't yours. And that's going to only bring frustration to you. In the meantime, there's community out there that needs you desperately to do what you've been made to do, what you're good at, what you're gifted at. And that's the thing you should pursue above all else.
I think Jeff said it perfectly. I think just to add on to that, two very quick thoughts. Do you even want to start a company? I think you have to think really hard about what your interests are. And just when you're alone and you think, what in your heart does it say that you want to do with your life? Or what are you interested in right now? And I think following that, those interests and following that passion where it leads, I think, yes, I can totally empathize with feeling pressure. So if it's pressure from your family, pressure from your friends, having a conversation and explaining kind of where your interests and where your passions lie. I think on the second point of short-term success, the pressure for short-term success, success isn't measured in the short term. It's measured over many, many years and through a lot of hard work. I think remembering back to high school, it's like you thought high school was the end. Like this is it. Like if you're popular, you're going to be popular for the rest of your life. And no, like a couple of years out of high school, I think success is measured in what you do every single day after you graduate from high school, and it takes a lot of hard work. It takes following your passion, even if it's hard, and trying to explain to the people in your life that this is what I want to do and this is what will make me happy.
We have another question for everyone, and we'll come back to Richie. Is if you can go back to your younger self and share one piece of advice, what would that piece of advice would you share?
Don't waste time. I know a lot of people right now, I feel like you guys are super young and you feel like you might have, well, you guys do have a lot of time, but just don't waste time, be productive. You know, I think right now in our society, it's really easy to get caught up in a lot of consuming. And sometimes you just gotta take a step back from all the consuming that we do, the media, you know, all the festivals or the music festivals and whatnot, and just step aside and ask yourself, what are you bringing to the table? Be about something. I meet a lot of kids nowadays sometimes, and it just doesn't seem like they're about something. And I always challenge them to look at yourself and what are you bringing to the table? And for my younger self, I would have really told myself to be about something, because for a while I wasn't really about anything. And that's what it is. So, you know, take a look at yourself in the mirror and stand for something, and you know, have a skill, be about something, have a mission. Just don't be a consumer. I know it's really easy right now, but yeah.
I talked earlier, I mentioned the fact that I used to hate science and technology. So for as long as I could remember, I had dreamed, you know, growing up to be a famous author, a famous writer. And then I got to the United States, you know, penniless, homeless, you know, countryless. So that shattered my dream because my English was so poor, right? So one day my dad sat me down to point out the obvious that, you know, I really had to give up. I need to give up my dream, my plan of becoming a famous writer. Because again, at this point, given my English proficiency, really my best bet is to concentrate on science and technology. Since it's a universal language, it wouldn't be so taxing on my very limited English. And my dad always also pointed out that being a dirt poor refugee like we were back then, my best bet for a college education is to have academic scholarship. So not only that I need to concentrate on science and technology, which I did well in school, by the way, but I also have to ace everything, he pointed out, because otherwise I would get that academic scholarship. So I cried for days. But deep down I knew that he was right. Because, yeah, you know, I had to admit that by now, really thinking of going into arts and humanities was pretty daunting at that point. And I was 16, 10th grade in high school. And I couldn't understand half the time what Macbeth is about, you know. All those people in Shakespeare didn't seem to speak English. Not even, you know, it's not the kind of English that all the kids around me spoke, you know, in high school. So how could I think of going into literature and arts? But I cried for days because why is it that I didn't want to go into science and technology? I never wanted to become an engineer, for God's sake, you know, because I thought that I had such creativity, and I assumed that, you know, science and technology were all about facts and numbers, and would kill somebody with a lot of creativity juice like me. But then in the end, I had to be practical, so I did go into chemical engineering. And then, to my surprise, I love it, okay? And then I suddenly realized that one could be creative in any field. Doesn't have to be arts, doesn't have to be literature. In case of engineering, okay, it's about applying known principles to solve new problems, to create, design new things. That certainly takes a lot of creativity. So why am I telling this to you? Keep your options open. A lot of time we make very important decisions in life without checking out on the facts. In my case, I just stumbled into science and technology. It took my dad to point out the obvious to me, but I could have gone on, in life with that assumption, without checking it out and realizing that engineering was great. And like I said earlier, I'm loving it. I spent my entire career of 34 years to date in science and technology, and I'm glad that I did. So again, please, before you go down a path, make sure you check out all the facts. Okay? Don't make assumptions. Thank you.
So if I could go back in time and give my younger self some advice, I would say, buy Google stock, Amazon. We'd have a different panel up here if that were the case, But probably the one thing would be take yourself seriously. These things suck life and time out of our life. And it's technology, they're cool, they're wonderful, it's all the fun things that are there, but the bottom line is, I would just say, boy, don't waste your time. We have limited time on this earth. You've been given a gift, you've been given a unique skill set that the world desperately needs. And I think most of you have heard the whole analogy of the 10,000 hours, that if you take anybody who's really great at any activity, you can stop and find in their life, whether it's a sports star, a musician, an artist, they've spent 10,000 hours working on that skill set to be really, really good at it. What is it that you should be really, really good at? The world desperately needs you, and it needs you to be working on that thing. We hear these stories about having to work the longer hours and put it in, but that means sacrificing, and those are the stories of when everybody else is going out to play, you're putting your head down to do that hard work, to become really good at that thing that we all need. We need you thriving, we need you successful, we need you really gifted at that one gift that only you bring to society.
I think the only thing I would like to add is, if I had to go back in time in high school and college, I would have taken more risks. I would have gone to that club that I saw a flyer about that I was interested in. I would have gotten to know that person in my class that I thought was interesting. I would have gotten to know more teachers. I would have gone to professors' office hours. Like, I would have put myself out there a little bit more and just explored my interests. And it could be interests directly related to what you're studying or kind of what you think your path is, or interests totally unrelated. So I think being more curious, taking more risks is what I would advise people.
Cool, so right now, I'm going to take a quick time out. I have to head to the airport, so I'm going to sub in. I'm done to finish up the moderation. Thanks, you guys. All the best.
Hey, everybody, give it up to Hoan one more time, please. Right, so, as we continue on here with the Q&A, con cũng muốn nói cho các bác biết là khi 12 giờ rưỡi thì cháu sẽ xong, thì các bác có thể ngồi ở đây lại, bác Ánh sẽ còn lại ở đây, và nếu mà muốn hỏi thêm bác Ánh, nếu mà nói bằng tiếng Mỹ thì bác Ánh sẽ trả lời bằng tiếng Mỹ, mà nói bằng tiếng Việt thì bác Ánh sẽ trả lời bằng tiếng Việt. So as we move on, let me see where he end up at, but okay, this is for Jeff. What would you tell your younger self about your career now?
Yeah, my younger self would have run from it. Would have said, yeah, don't do that, don't do that. And I think we just heard some great answers to that. The ideas of, one, get ready for it. I wish I had spent more time preparing for helping people in need. There's a lot of times my job, people think that I'm naturally compassionate. Oh, if you work with the homeless, you must have a really big heart. And it's like, no, I don't. And it's like, there's a lot of times I'm thinking, come on, people, just get yourself a life, you know? It's like, but then I start to understand them and I get to know them. So I believe I would have just simply have said, I think having the courage to take the risk, to be able to step into situations where we might not naturally want to go, I would have done my best to prepare if I would have known. Not knowing is very difficult to prepare for that. But the bottom line is, I think that each of us don't know. It comes back to that tennis ball and being flexible, and I think that part's true as well. Be incredibly flexible with what your direction's going to be, because most of us start on a path doing one thing, and in the end we end up doing something completely different. I have a ton of friends who went and got a degree doing one thing, and the one thing they learned after getting the degree was they never wanted to do that. Be okay with that, and recognize that skill set later on in life is going to be worthwhile and is going to teach you much.
Thank you very much, Jeff. It's a good question for you, Richie. If you two were to end tomorrow, what would be your next career?
What did you say? Oh, maybe man. If you two were to end today, I think it's something that I actually still want to do in the future, is some type of youth center for kids, you know, where they could offer a little bit of everything, like, you know, some counseling, maybe some sports, a little bit of everything. And this is something that I do want to plan on doing in Seattle. So if anybody has any hopes of doing something similar, please feel free to reach out. Something that I kind of want to do here in Seattle. And but yeah, other than that, probably that, or doing some type of marketing for a clothing company or a sneaker company or something like that.
Well, UGM has youth programs, so you can just come when we have a youth center and runs all these programs. So you're good if, you know, things go bad with you too. So.
This is what it's all about. You guys are providing resources right here. So, here's a question for Ánh. You spoke a little bit about emotional intelligence. What are some resources or tips would you suggest to practice emotional intelligence? And there's a little PS at the end here. And I'm going to ask this anyway because it came from somebody who texted in. Do you like being referred to as the bomb lady?
So about EI, there are a lot of books out there, by the way. Of course, you don't learn all of this stuff in schools. I wish that schools would spend some time in teaching us this, what I would call the third dimension of one's success, right? A career success, usually they talk about your experience and your education, but really, in my mind, the third one, the EI, is very important. Because if you think about it, education and experience help you do a job well, you know, help you achieve your goals, but emotional intelligence help influence what you want to do in the first place. Okay? I would say when we talk about emotional intelligence, let me just quickly define what it means in my mind. Emotional intelligence is about the ability to perceive, assess, and influence one's own emotions as well as others. Okay? So it starts with yourself, right? The first thing is about building our own character. That's part of EI. So I talk about the tennis ball versus the apple early on, right? Another part of character building is what actually was touched on earlier by Eric and Michael. Okay, think about the fact that in order to, if we want to motivate and influence others, we have to be able to motivate, influence ourselves first, right? And that also means the ability to control one's emotions at all times. A lot of time we would let others control or dictate how we feel. Okay? Let's say somebody does something bad to me. I have the choice of how I'm going to react. Right? I can choose to be angry, I can choose to be upset, disappointed, which means I let that person get to me, right? Or I could choose to ignore the person and move on, or I could choose to do something about it to stop that person from doing it to me again. Whatever is my choice, be conscious that it is my choice. Okay? I don't want to say, we shouldn't say, well, because he did this to me, that's why I had to do that for him. Or he made me feel this way, or she made me act that way. By saying that, by believing that, we're giving up the control to that person or that event or that thing, instead of staying in control about how we choose to act or react. So another word that people use is try to be proactive rather than being reactive. I believe it's very, very important. Okay? So don't ever put ourselves or see ourselves as a victim. We're not a victim of anything. Other people does this or do that to us, or this event happened to us, but in the end, it's our control how we choose to react to it. If I understand that the way I am today is because of what the choices that I made yesterday, then I could always choose to be something else tomorrow because I'm in control. And therefore, I could change my situation. There are a lot of books, guys, about this. Read them up. There are a lot of training that you can take on the internet as well. Again, wish that schools would teach us a lot of this, but because of that, we could always try to teach ourselves that, oh, by the way, coming to places like this, spending your time outside of schools on your weekends, coming to work volunteer in community work, in serving others, you also learn a lot about how to interact with other people, to learn about how to motivate yourself as well as to influence yourself and others. This is also about how to teach yourself emotional intelligence that you will learn later on and apply to your job once you graduate from college or high school and choose your career.
Wonderful. Maybe Anh Long, can you write your grant on EI curriculum for the Seattle School District, please? Anh Long, you touched on this a little bit, and there was a question that, do you feel that regardless of your background, everyone has a chance to make it out and up in life? Yes. Many people believe that the rich are only get background determine your future, and please provide your thoughts.
I think the answer is yes. I think hopefully my story is reflective of that belief. I think no matter where you come from, you can do anything you want. And I think the reason why I work in education, because I believe education is that pathway. So that graduating from high school, if college is in your path, getting a college degree, education will open so many doors, but that's just the first step. I think it's being interested in things, working really hard. But I think having an education is just critical, at least a high school diploma. And I think with every passing year, just more and more education is needed. So if it's college, it's college. If it's a 2-year college, that's great as well. If it's just a technical or other type of credential, you need education in order to be successful. But at the same time, it's not a replacement for hard work, for volunteer experiences, for work experiences. But I think hopefully my story is reflective of the belief that it doesn't matter where you come from, you can be the sons and daughters of refugees, and you can make it, and you can be doing what you really are passionate about, and also be able to take care of your family.
Thank you, Mom. You do have a great story. Here's a question for everybody. Start with Richie. Did you have moments where you doubted yourself and wanted to give up? And how did you overcome that?
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of times where you put out a piece of work and a lot of people have a lot of feedback, and a lot of times not the most positive feedback, especially being on YouTube and everything. You put out videos and you put yourself in a vulnerable position where everybody is so critical of what you're doing. YouTube is like known for people trolling and saying comments and whatnot. And for myself, obviously, coming up, you're going to pay attention to what people are saying, and it's going to sway you in the way that you don't want to be swayed. You feel really negative, but like I keep saying, if you believe in what you're trying to do and the mission, all that stuff will eventually fade away. And there have been times where I've put out, content, and the community or whoever might have not received it in a way that I thought would have received it. But like they said it's not the end of the world, you keep moving, and it's just part of the puzzle. I think one thing for me that I had to come to realize is one video doesn't complete your journey and your story. It's just part of the puzzle and to what you're eventually trying to accomplish. So I just try to look at the bigger picture and let the little comments and everything not really stop what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I'll tell you a story to put things in context. Again, as you know, about a month after the tragedy of 9/11, that's when I got a call from the Pentagon to help come up with this new weapon to defeat tunnels in Afghanistan, because the president already made the decision to send American troops there. So without a new weapon, our guys will have to go in those tunnels and clear out the Taliban themselves, which means a lot of casualties, high casualties for Americans will be expected. So I had this team of scientists and engineers, and we worked around the clock, we wrecked our brain, trying to overcome all the technical and logistical challenges to come up with this new weapon. And we did it in less than 2 months. So I was so elated. I said, okay, job done. Now the next, last and simple task is to go and see this Air Force safety officer, because the plan was to have this new thermobaric bomb launched by the Air Force F-15E. So in order to hang a new bomb on this $40 million per piece F-15E aircraft, I had to get the safety clearance from the Air Force. To my utmost dismay, he said, no can do. And he said that he would need more data, and based on my calculation or assessment, that would take about 4 to 6 more months. Now, as you know, normally a weapon development effort takes 5 to 10 years even, because we have to be very careful. Safety is indeed the utmost priority, because we don't want to cause accidents, we don't want to kill ourselves. But every single day that we don't have this weapon, every one more day that we don't have this weapon means our troops will have to go into those tunnels and clear them out personally. More and more American casualties. So I couldn't convince him otherwise. I couldn't convince him to accept data that I already had. By the way, although the new thermobaric bomb that we built had a new brand new explosive in it, the new thermobaric explosive, but that explosive has already been qualified by the Navy, meaning that it has already been certified to be safe and suitable. But this is the Air Force, right? So I went home completely defeated. I had a sleepless night. I felt so bad that I felt like I failed the American troops. You know, I keep thinking of our guys having to go into those tunnels. And I keep thinking of my next step, which is I'm going to have to call up the Pentagon and tell them that I'm sorry, but I'm not going to be able to keep my promise of trying to deliver this new weapon to Afghanistan by December 2011. But then after a sleepless night, I gave myself that pep talk on you are a resilient tennis ball. You will bounce back. What have you learned from that disappointing meeting with that safety officer? And then I realized I was too emotional. I was not cool-headed, sufficiently cool-headed. You know, all negotiation techniques teach you that in order to negotiate something, the first step is you have to listen out. You have to listen to what the other person's concern is. I was too busy explaining my case. I was too busy trying to convince the Air Force safety officer that my Navy data was good. I really did not ask him a lot of questions. I made a lot of assumptions about what he wanted or what his concerns were. So I decided to change my tack. I asked for another appointment. And when I came in, I sat down and said to the safety officer that, let's start over, let's start again. I'm just here to try to understand your concerns. Please tell me, you know, what is it that you really need? And then after a short conversation and some questions, I suddenly realized that his real concerns was about the fact that because this is a new explosive, we didn't have any aging characteristics data because it's brand new, right? So he was worried about the long-term storage characteristic of the bomb. Okay? So then I said that, well, how about if you certify these bombs for just one-way trip to Afghanistan? Meaning if for some reason we don't use up the bombs, they will never come back to the United States. So therefore, we don't have to worry about storage. We just blow them up if we don't use them. So let's just certify them for a one-way trip. He thought about it and said, okay. You know, after a few more days, he came back and said, yeah, sure. So, thanks to his flexibility, we made it, right? And in the end, we delivered the bombs to Afghanistan in 67 days. But I almost didn't make it. Because why? I was too emotional. Because why? I was too concerned, focused on explaining my case instead of listening to his case. Again, one point here, guys, is in negotiation, the first rule is you have to make sure that you understand the others, your counterparts' point of view, their concerns. They have to feel that they have been heard. Once people feel that they have been heard, they will be more willing to listen to you and try to understand you. But they have to feel that they are well understood first, before they will be willing to listen and try to understand me in this case. So it was a hard lesson learned, but thank God I learned that quickly over time. So that was luck as well. And again, you know, that pep talk about being a tennis ball really helped, guys. Thank you.
There's a ton of failure. The risks and the challenges are out there. If something's easy to do, then somebody else has already done it. All the things that are going to make the difference are going to be hard, and they're going to be just, the path is going to be fraught with failure, with risks. One of my favorite quotes that helps me get through those challenges and those failures is the quote that just simply says, if the wind will not serve, take to the oars. So I'm going to unpack that just for a second because not everybody understands that. If the wind will not serve, take to the oars. So if you get out in a sailboat and you've got a destination in mind and the wind's not taking you there and the wind just goes flat and the sailboat's not going, is that it? Are you done? Or do you put the oars in the water and you start pulling another way? And the difference between those things that are done with greatness in our society are always done with those people who meet those failures head on, but it doesn't stop them. Have that idea in mind that you're trying to solve and find a way around it, find a way through it, find a way to get it done.
I think I'm going to also answer the last question that I was asked along with this question. It's like, I think if the question is, do I have doubts? I still have doubts every single day. And I think I had doubts all throughout high school. I think having parents who didn't go to college, they couldn't help me with the college application process. So I had to work twice as hard. And I feel like I've had to work twice as hard every single day compared to people who grew up with wealth or grew up with parents who could help them navigate the path. So I remember applying to college. I was applying to college before you applied online, so like you had to get hard copy. And I remember going to UW and not knowing where to go and having to ask around to get, where do I get an application to apply? But you figure it out. I went to school with friends who also didn't have parents who went to college, so we all figured it out together. We all worked really hard together. And I think also recognizing that our parents and our grandparents and the sacrifices that they made, we're here today because of them, and we stand on their shoulders, and they had to work twice as hard for what they have. So it's now your turn to work, to put in some work. But you have way more resources than we ever had. You have technology, you have friends. You may have parents who have kind of walked this path before, so use your resources, but there is no replacement for hard work. You've got to put in the work.
Thank you very much. We have time for one more question, and that's go to all of you guys too. And you spoke a little bit about the resources, but it also seems like nowadays youth suffer a lot from peer pressure, like schools and community. What advice do you all have for them to filter out and live a unique life? We'll start with you, Long.
I think one, Richie talked about, you gotta block out all the haters. And then two, I think you have to surround yourself with friends that care about you. And you'll learn over time which friends really care about you and which ones may be taking advantage of you. So surrounding yourself with a core group of people who truly care about you. Surround yourself with family members that care about you. Juan talked about it, that our families only want the best for us.
Yeah, to reiterate what they were saying, yeah, just surround yourself with people who are on the same page of what you're trying to accomplish. It just makes everything that much more easier. After LA, when I moved back to Seattle, I made sure that I really surrounded myself with a core group of friends, and I knew what, and I let them know exactly what I was trying to accomplish and what the mission was, and they were on board. So any times that I hung out with friends, it was not really to like, you know, sometimes we would, you know, play basketball or whatnot, but a lot of the times it was towards, you know, making videos and trying to further my career and everything. And one thing I think too, come to realize, a lot of people that are giving you the peer pressure or talking about what you're doing are the ones that don't have a lot going on for themselves sometimes, you know, or else they wouldn't even be talking about you. So I think that kind of helps as well. Just focus on your mission and
Okay, guys, great advice. Thank you, everyone. What do you guys think? Was that amazing? How about another big round of applause for all of our speakers, please? I want to thank all of our speakers. Anh Long, thank you very much for making the time to be here with us. Thank you for all your great work at the Seattle School District. And I believe that your grant writing will help Seattle School District be great again, right? Thank you very much for your work there. Jeff, thank you very much for making the time and all your amazing work in our community to help the homeless in our community here. You know, your swimming pool and your 12 garage car is awaiting for you. Richie, man, I'm impressed with you, bro. I didn't realize YouTuber was a profession, but I am fascinated by what you do, and please come out and hang out in our community more. We can definitely use some positive influence here. So thank you for being here. And Bác Anh, we are truly honored for you to be here with us. She is a super busy woman, and for her to make the time to be here with us is a great testament to her love and support for the young people in our community. So a big round of applause for her and everyone here.